Now, today is Sunday, the 26th.
No, it's not.
Today is Thursday.
Exactly.
The 26th.
Yes.
Tomorrow is?
Friday.
The?
27th.
Saturday?
The 28th.
Sunday?
The 29th.
Okay. Now, on the 29th of September, we'll be marking the 5th International Day of Awareness on Food Loss and Waste, with the theme Climate Finance for Food Loss and Waste Reduction. Kenya is an agriculture-based economy. So issues of food loss and waste are very big issues, right? So Monday should be a public holiday.
I agree with you.
Very good.
In fact, we can start tomorrow.
Very good. We have brought two people to help us push this agenda so we don't go to work on Monday. And those are Rebeccah Wanjiru is a food system specialist at Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, and Dr. Christopher Mutungi, senior researcher, food programs at the World Resources Institute. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
Good morning, Eric.
Karibuni sana to Kenya's biggest conversation. It's good to have you here. We'll be talking about this food loss and waste and just getting to understand what it means, what it's all about, and why even the world has decided let's actually have an international day to mark issues of food loss and waste. But to welcome you to the conversation, courtesy of CT, I have the proverb. This week, the proverbs are from Senegal. All right? Have you been to Senegal, Dr.
Not quite, has it?
Not yet, huh?
Not yet.
Rebeccah, have you been to Senegal?
No, not yet.
Yeah, you should both go.
It's beautiful. Dakar is a beautiful city. Yeah.
So tulipia tickets. Tuone. Okay, we'll talk to you. Yeah. So the proverb for today, let's enter the proverb and give us your interpretation. The heart is not a knee that can be bent. The heart is not a knee that can be bent. Let's start with you, Rebeccah. What's your interpretation of this?
Well, in literal terms, the heart is soft and it's not as flexible as a knee that you can bend your knee to get down and pick something if you need to, instead of just standing. So it means, for me, it means you take care of your heart. But then it also means that you need to analyze and look at different circumstances. Some are very fragile and some are flexible. So handle them with the due care that they deserve. The fragile ones, know how to handle them because the actions you take can have long-lasting effects. And the flexible ones, which are relating to the knee, you can be able to know how to handle them.
Allocate them nicely.
Yeah.
Fragile ones, put them in the heart. Flexible ones, take them to the knee.
Take them to the legs.
Okay. Dr. What's your interpretation?
Yeah, that's a very interesting proverb. To me, it speaks to things that you see and others that you don't see. And sometimes we speak quite often for frequently of matters of the heart. And so sometimes there are things that you think you can be able to influence, but not quite. But if something that's dear to you, perhaps it becomes difficult to influence, and you should just respect other people's opinion with that regard. That's the way I see it.
Good one. Good interpretations. You know, they both contexts actually make sense, and that's a good thing about proverbs. Yeah? So you interpret a proverb and you're like, it actually makes sense the way you see it. So now let's get to understand what food waste is and food loss. And let's start with you, Dr. Ari. Let's start with Wanjiru. What do we mean when we say food waste and food loss, and why are they different?
Okay, when we talk about food loss and wastes, what we mean generally is that there's a reduction in quantity and quality of food that was meant for human consumption, and this food is ending up in being disposed in certain areas that are not suitable, or it's going up in landfills, or it's being thrown away. So the difference is that food loss occurs post-harvest. On the farmer side, from harvest to transportation, and ends up to the point of retail. On the other hand, when we talk about food waste now starts from that point whereby we have this active engagement of the consumer. So at some point in the retail, there's some waste that is happening. Let's say, for example, in the service sector, the hotel industry, schools, households, consumers. So this is happening on this other end of the supply chain, all the way up to utilization. So we are wasting food that we maybe have prepared, we intended to consume. Yes.
I see the distinction now.
Yeah.
We are losing what we've harvested,
Yes.
and that's intended to go to the market. And then once in the market, we are purchasing for the intention of consumption, and we are wasting it.
Yes.
In the way we are handling it.
Yes.
In maybe you've cooked too much.
Yes.
And
You bought too much.
You bought too much.
You didn't store properly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is it such a big concern, Dr. Mutungi?
Yeah, just before I say why it is a big concern, I also want to add a perspective that's emerging. That in the production of food, there's also what is produced with it, which is not necessarily edible. I like to give the example of a banana. At the moment you buy a banana, you spend your 10 shillings or 20 shillings. And looking backwards, you see that there's quite a bit of resources that have gone into the production, the transportation of bringing that banana into the market. But you eat what is ripe, what you think is edible, and the rest you get into the side. And perhaps that's one banana, but think of the whole mass that, for example, comes from Kesi and ends up as peels in landfills. Now, that's a perspective that we need also to think about when we talk of food loss and waste.
Wait, Dr. Mutungi, are you saying that we should consider banana peels as food?
I'm not asking anybody to eat banana peels, but there's a lot of value in it. And I'm coming to the to respond to your question on why then should we address food loss and waste. Looking at the entire, the food production and the system of handling it all in entirety, you realize there is a component in which we are using really limited resources to produce food. And if, for example, a country like ours would be losing a third of what it produces, it means actually by stopping that loss, you would actually free land that is used to produce food. And probably that could turn to something else, either used for reforestation or to generate more value in terms of alternative uses. But having said that, it is important to address the question of food loss and waste because of three core issues. One, because of the social aspect to it, that if you waste food, then you are denying people a basic need. Food is just as basic as anything you can think about. And in a country where we don't even we don't have enough food, and we have quite many people go hungry every day, then losing food is not justifiable. Two, think of it in terms of economic terms. In terms of the resources that go to it. If you then avoid or take measures to avoid loss and waste, then there's a business case for households, for consumers, for businesses, for a country like ours in terms of GDP. We spend so much money importing food. And then the environmental component, which goes to what I was speaking to. If residues or refuse goes to landfills and it ferments and produces methane and all that greenhouse gas emissions. Yeah.
So what is the state of the world? Well, maybe not. Maybe the world is too big at this point. If we can zone it down to where we are now, and what are we looking at in the states whereby we're saying, so there is food waste, there is food loss. Where is Kenya today in terms of what is happening with food loss and food waste?
Well, in Kenya, first of all, we have evidence that indicates that for certain commodities, like fruits and vegetables, we do waste 30 to 40% of the fruits and vegetables, mostly due to the high perishable nature of these commodities and the lack of supporting infrastructure to support, let's say, cooling, proper harvesting. So there is that evidence that indicates that. So, and again, when we think about Kenya lacking proper mechanisms, for example, when you're thinking about post-harvest at the farm level, the storage on the other end, the transportation mechanisms we use. We see a lot how our food is transported in Kenya. We see, and you have questions, but along that chain, as it comes all the way to Nairobi, to this beautiful city where we are going to buy that food, a lot is happening in terms of the losses and the waste, and also the degradation in terms of value, because there's also nutrient lost when you are handling food in the wrong way and you're not able to preserve the right temperatures. Yeah.
Okay. So when we think about this, and I just think about the horrors of a few years ago when we saw pictures of folks throwing away their milk, okay? And this then lends to proper infrastructure for storage, for example. So perhaps if you have fresh milk and you store it a bit longer, then we won't see now when there's a glut in the market, then that you have to throw it away. So when we talk about food loss and food waste, what are some of the mechanisms that actually need to be put in place? Because that's what we're saying. We shouldn't actually have to waste food. We shouldn't buy more than we can consume. We shouldn't serve more than we can consume, things like that. But when we look at the harvest and when we look at what happens at that level, are there things that we can actually do? Can you dehydrate your milk, for example, and turn it into condensed milk or milk powder on a large scale so that you can use it later? Can you desiccate your maize? Can you dry your fruit? There's a story of a young woman, I believe it is in Baringo, and her business is based solely on taking the mangoes that either
overripe.
fall or overripe, and then she dries them and she exports dried mango. So, and that's all she does. She just takes the ones that are overripe. So what kinds of mechanisms can be put in place to ensure that even if something will fall by the wayside, that we can do something with it, add some value, use an infrastructure mechanism to make sure that it can serve in the future or to somebody else who needs it?
Yeah, do your spot on. I think you understand what needs to be done very well. But let me start by saying that what is needed is actually collective action. You've pointed out the question of, the issue of infrastructure, and that's a big issue. And who is to fix the infrastructure?
Right.
Today, for example, we know that agriculture is a devolved function. And when you think of infrastructure, like the example that you've given, then you speak to, for example, the road network. And it is clear, for example, the case of milk, it needs to be delivered to the market at the right time. Otherwise, if it stays, in transit for a longer period, then it just spoils and that's loss. So on that bit, as WRI and FAO as well, there's a lot of engagement that's happening now, even with the county governments, to begin to think of how to prioritize actions that would alleviate the infrastructure pain for most farmers. That's on the one side. But also thinking in terms of the preservation that you're talking about. If it requires then cold storage or cold chain, that is something that could be done and should be done. But again, speaking to the question of value addition, I want to be very specific. First of all, I'm a food technologist by training. And I see a lot of opportunity if you can be able to apply technology to transform what is perishable to stable product. But that can only happen if there's investment. And that investment will not happen because one or two big companies are investing. It should be that we have the right framework in terms of policy enabling environment, so that we see now SMEs, the ones we are talking about, that woman who is transforming mango into dried products, to be able to engage sufficiently and transform what does not enter the fresh market into value-added products that can even last longer and can be, traded across borders. Speaks to markets as well.
Yeah. And in addition to what Chris has said, we also need to look at these interventions at different levels and be very context specific, because we have interventions at the macro level whereby we are talking about the infrastructure, we are talking about the policies, but then when we go down to, let's say, at communal level, what can be done even on a short term, in the long term, in the medium term. Sometimes the issue of wastes also requires us to make a very conscious decision as actors within this system. As a consumer, I make my conscious decision. As a trader, you have your produce and it's coming to at that point whereby you have these bananas that are almost coming to, they are overripe. And you're moving to the stage where you're going to throw them away because you don't have cold storage facilities. We need to get to that point, and there's a lot of awareness needed to make a conscious decision. Do I reduce this price and sell this commodity? Do I connect? There are people out there who are looking for how to make the juices, creating opportunities for youth, for young women, make juices. Can you bring the price down instead of waiting until you throw it away in the garbage? So all these, the interventions require us as food system actors to make these decisions every day. If it is in the rural areas, do we need to think about very complex interventions, or do we need to look at what is in that area? We have very cold zones in this country that can actually build cold storage facilities that may not require to run on power because of the environment that is in those places. Places like Nyandarua, where roots and tubers can be stored in those very cold storage facilities that are made of local materials. So we need to really contextualize and think about the interventions in these different spaces.
It's interesting that you say that, because just early this morning as we were talking about the topic, and I said to Eric, I said, like, the banana thing drives me nuts because I see these bandas all over the place and I look at these bananas in their hundreds and they're getting ripe every day and I think, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to them? And they're already ripe. They're not being bought. We pass the second day and they're there. They're going to go. Mm-hmm. So even as I think about that practical situation, and then you talk about food system actors against this backdrop of food waste and food loss, and my mind wants to go to a place whereby if all the actors, because yes, there are organizations that are actors, government is an actor, the people who consume, who farm, they're actors as well. How should the thinking or how should the action then now morph into what we're looking at across board with? What can this banana become, and not just the fruit that you will eat? So when it gets to the stages where it is starting to go off, what else can it do in this ecosystem? Is that how the thinking should be? Can I take the peel and turn it into a basket? What is the industry doing? Mm-hmm. Can I take the ripe fruit and dry it and turn it into flour, for example? Are those some of the things that a conversation would be around, to now have all of these actors in the conversation? Yeah.
And now we are talking about also creating the cottage industries within the communities, because you're saying as a product, it's not only the primary product that you see, the banana. Yeah. There are so many byproducts that will come out of it. We have avocados. Avocado is a fruit. You eat it, but you can get oil from avocado. So when it gets to that point where it is really getting ripe, you don't want it to get to the point now where it has that foul smell and you have to throw it away. So do we transform it into avocado oil? The avocado seed is such a precious commodity nowadays. There are people looking for the seed in itself. It can be used to make artificial firewood. FAO, we had such an intervention in Nairobi with a youth group whereby we were creating awareness and capacity building on how do you move this avocado. And again, it goes to the point whereby creating this awareness that the trader within that market makes a conscious decision not to let it get to that point. I can sell it at a fraction, maybe at the break-even point, because it's at a point where now I'm not going to make anything, instead of throwing it away. And when you see, we throw this food, especially when we think about urban areas, the food that is wasted actually ends up beyond the landfills. It ends up in our rivers. It ends up it ends up on our roads. It ends up in so many places, creating a lot of nuisance and a lot of environment and pollution. So, as you're saying, we need to think about not just the primary product, and think about what other enterprises and what other uses can we make out of this primary product, so that we don't waste anything, both the edible and the inedible.
Rebeccah, when you say we need to think, who's we?
All of us.
Maybe I can put some point to that. We have already started thinking. We have already thought, and I want to give you some practical examples of some of the work that is happening quite strongly within, for example, WRI. What you are speaking about is actually the concept of circularity. Understanding that there's value in every piece that is produced, and you just need to unlock that potential of somebody else to do it. We have a program that we are working with enterprises, small enterprises, not in Kenya. We started in Rwanda for purposes of trying to see how it rolls out. And here we are working with these small enterprises linked together in a sort of a multi-stakeholder kind of a platform for the SMEs to air their perspectives, but also for government to be able to pick lessons and see what can be done about certain issues. So what happens, we have small enterprises that are adding value into those items that my friend is talking about. And there are challenges in terms of policy. I mean, the enabling the policy so that they can even enter the market. There are questions of standards, certification, and so forth. And so the program that's ongoing is trying to unlock those challenges. And we have seen very successful movements towards the right direction. Moving forward, we want to bring those lessons also into our country.
Yeah.
These are two perspectives that can actually learn from each other. But there's another very important bit that's working very well. Recently, we have launched what we call the Champions 12.3 Companies Action. In this initiative is a bit complicated in terms of what it is, but we are engaging companies so that they can create an ecosystem with their smallholder producers to reduce loss and waste at farm level. Now, we launched this exercise or this initiative this week in New York, Climate Week this week. And good enough, there were 3 companies from Kenya that participated in this event, which shows you that really things are beginning to pick up. And we expect, actually, if you like, I can mention some of these companies here, because we want more companies to come on board and strengthen that ecosystem. We have, for example, Sereniferise, that's big in the potato value chain. We have Spice World, which is good big in the cereals initiative, and then we have Premier Foods in the fruits and vegetables sector. So these companies that have committed to work with smallholder farmers to reduce farm and near farm losses, but also grow the ecosystem that can really then find a value in terms of converting what comes from these companies back to the small and medium enterprises.
Okay. Rebeccah, you said we need to think, we need to start taking action. And you say from the point of a consumer, even looking at the trader, and in fact you kept repeating the trader. You are seeing your produce is actually almost getting out of market. What decision do you take? Now remember, a trader is there to make money, and they can clearly see, I bought a bunch of bananas, they haven't been bought, and I'm going to incur a loss. So they're definitely not just sitting there not thinking what to do. I've just remembered, as we were having that conversation, the conversation that we've had here with the chairperson of the Mitumba Consortium of Kenya, right? She's called Teresia. And she was telling us about this Mitumba entire value chain. From the time the Mitumbas are brought in by the big importers in containers, in big bales, then they open the bales and the people come and take camera and the rest. And the ones that have not been taken, they'll still end up in the market.
Yes.
When you see people selling mitumba and saying kumi, 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 this
the
is
last
because
bit.
it's just come, it's the last bit, and those will still find someone. So business knows I do not want to incur a loss, even if it's sell it for 10 bob, it's okay. You pick it, go and sell it for 5 bob, it's okay. So this person who is watching as their bananas are going to waste, or as their avocado is going to waste, as it's not that they're not thinking. So what is lacking? It's the option. It's the option of the what next, probably. It's somebody to offtake this, so that then the other side comes in. So if I offtake these old overripe bananas, what can I do with them? Can I go and make banana bread for mass distribution? It's that's lacking.
Absolutely.
Who brings that other person into this conversation? If you think about what the government has been talking about, I think we've spent several billions already so far on development of the county aggregation and industrial parks. We have spent a lot of money in the Ministry of Cooperatives and MSMEs over the years, trying to bring cooperatives together and farmer cooperatives for aggregation purposes again. That's a missing link, despite all the time and money and effort and knowledge that is there. Why, Rebeccah?
So thank you for that question. And I think let me step back and not just talk about the food loss and waste issue and who, but think about the whole agri-food system and the actors and the inefficiencies and the processes that are going on within the agri-food system. So the conversation we are having right now is how do we move from working in silos? Because you're saying there's somebody who has this produce here, somebody else is not able to offtake. Sometimes it's lack of information, sometimes is lack of, I don't know, once I offtake, what do I do with it? So we are saying that for us to improve our food system, we need to move away from working in our silos, in our own cocoons, in our own specialities, and think about joint collaboration efforts to improve the inefficiencies within the agri-food system. Now, when we come to addressing food loss and waste, one of the things that FAO has done in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture is develop the National post-harvest strategy for management of food loss and waste. This strategy, which was developed as a joint effort, and one of the things that was very innovative is that it was bringing all stakeholders together so that everybody is able to bring issues and understand and say what role, as a private sector, what role can we play in addressing food loss and waste? As the government, what role can we play? What actions are we going to take? As traders, as a community of farmers, what are we going to do? So there are certain interventions that are in that strategy. One of them is to, first of all, ensure that we enhance multi-sector collaboration, because the issue of food loss and waste is not a one-sector issue. It's not a Ministry of Agriculture issue only. We have the Ministry of Environment that is mandated with ensuring that we have a safe environment and waste management. We have the Ministry of Trade, whereby a lot of this waste, especially at market level, is generated. We have Ministry of Health. So how do we bring all these stakeholders together to ensure that we are dealing with this issue in a very collaborative way? So that's one of the way. And I think when we say who should be on this or who should make things work, we all have a role to play. When you think about knowledge and information, I don't know how to dehydrate my fruits or my vegetables. We have research and academia. They bring in this knowledge, develop training packages so that we are able to train. We have a very vibrant youth population, and unemployment rate is always very high statistics in Kenya, especially in urban areas. So why can't we create training packages that are very cost effective and train our young people on how to offtake, yes, and how do we create things, other byproducts from this food that would otherwise have gone to waste. When we think about government, is there legislation? Are there regulations to support management of waste? Sometimes the issue of waste can be as much as simple as a retailer, as you're saying, Eric. As a retailer, as a supermarket, I'm in business. So I always put up maybe a markup to a point where I know I'll make my profit. And when it gets to the waste, I have covered that waste in the cost that I transfer to you as a consumer. So as you're seeing those pineapples, the cost was already covered.
In what was bought.
In what was bought, what was sold to the initial person. So that's why I'm not so... you're not feeling it possibly as the actor there, because you've already made your money from the first batch of the pineapples you sold.
But that also talks about that ingenuity of the trader.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You see, the trader is already looking and seeing, naturally here, I'm going to have a 20% loss, all right? So I need to make sure that as I'm selling, it covers the 20%. It's the same reason why, for example, I remember having conversations with the people in the meat industry, and they're saying, one of the reasons why meat is expensive in this country, it's because that trader bought carcass. It has bone, it has all those things. Some of this bone is not going to end up in anyone's plate. It's not going to be able to sell. And then I'm going to have some losses because I don't have chillers, I don't have cold chain. And so they factored it in. When you're buying your kilo of meat, you're buying it, that price includes what is going to waste later. It's the ingenuity of the trader, but it hurts everybody, including that trader, right? And the thing that you're saying, for example, there's a strategy on how to address food loss and waste. And that strategy has then some action points. How far are we in implementing that strategy? If you just think about it and look back, are we on course with the implementation of the strategy?
The strategy was just finalized. It
Okay.
will be launched this International Day of Awareness.
Oh, brilliant.
And we start on implementation and tracking progress. It was very important that we put up indicators on how to track progress in implementation by the different stakeholders.
Does it have like an owner, this thing?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be the different people, Ministry of Environment plus Ministry of Trade plus because of this intervention that talks about collaboration, all of you are owners of it. And you know what happens when you have three ministries?
Maybe I can.
Whose head should we?
Maybe I can say
Ask
something
for
because
if it doesn't work.
I've seen it.
Yes.
I've seen the strategy, and the next steps after the launch are clear in our mind. We must now move to the counties and help counties develop action plans, and I think that is the bigger task ahead of us. And if we can demonstrate with several counties that this thing is making sense, then there are obviously those counties that come a little bit behind. They will be able to learn from what is happening elsewhere. But as you have said, really, I think there's need to mainstream in terms of even the ministries in terms of the way they relate. I mean, it's not only a question of the environment ministry. Unfortunately, even when you think of matters of waste, even if it's coming from a food, seems to be addressed by the Ministry of Environment in most cases, not necessarily in our country, but also elsewhere. But we want to have a system where we can help county governments also to mainstream and speak to each other with respect to issues of waste in terms of food loss and waste, agriculture, trade, environment, social services. All this, they have a role to play.
Health.
And it's clear in the strategy. I think they were involved in the development of the strategy. Yeah.
Is there an understanding? Because again, coming back to actors who work interdependently, is there an understanding across the board as to how severe this issue is and what can actually be done? Because remember that if I'm just using Kenya as an example here, and then we can use that maybe to bring in some of the policies that you work with, that we've come out of a heavy months of extreme flooding between the months of March and June. It was crazy. But this is interesting because we came out of August to November, December last year, where there was extreme drought and there were people on the brink of starvation. So when we look at that vis-a-vis the kind of loss and waste that is still existing, when you have that extreme level, then I think it would beg the question that is there an understanding of the severity of the issue and say, look, how can we take what we see here and apply it somewhere else. Even if you're not giving people who are starving pineapples, but you're getting a value add out of using that you can free up resources to sort out people on this other end who may be starving. At the policy level, are such discussions being had?
I think the understanding, we are not there yet in terms of understanding the severity of food loss and waste, and even understanding the implications on the future, the future generation and the future of our, let's say, our country, or even the future of the world. Because we are just seeing it as it is at the moment. We are just seeing that it's just those pineapples piled there at the moment. Maybe they won't be there next. We're not thinking about the impact on climate change, what it will cost us in terms of when we throw it in the landfills and the greenhouse gas emissions. What is it going to cost us now and in the future? And that is where we now need to generate or to come up with data, because informed decision making requires relevant data, on-time data. So we need to understand, to come up with data on food loss and waste measurements, understand the economic loss implications, and understand, for example, when you say there's evidence that indicates that per capita food consumption in Africa is about 1.5 kgs. So, and vis-a-vis the wastes, each individual wastes about 31 kgs at household level. When you think about the retail, it can go, and service sector, these hotels and what, it can go up to 90 kgs.
31 kilos per year?
1 kg.
Yes.
Per person?
Per person.
Waste.
That's just one study.
What?
Another study indicates that it can be up to 90 kgs for the service industry. That is the hotel. When you go to a hotel and there's all this buffet and you pick and pick and pick and nobody eats, it can go up to 90 kgs per person. So we need those kind of calculations and see this 90 kgs, how many people can it feed? If you as one individual person, and how many people can this 90 kg feed? So data is really important, and that's one of the key things that as FAO and with partnership with other players like WRI, with government, within the strategy there's a lot of focus on data, because we are also lacking enough data to inform decision making, because most of the times you cannot act on what you don't know. And most of the time, we are only seeing that food on the plate. We do not see the consequences after and what happens through the waste and the loss.
You know,
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to pick from where she left. That data is really key, and we say you have to measure. And if you don't measure, you don't understand what is happening, then you cannot take the right action. One of our running statements is that we apply this slogan that you measure, set your targets, and take actions. And after taking action, come back again and track those actions. So it's measure, target, measure, act approach. But I don't want to leave without saying that some of the partners that we have done some very good job. I want to speaking to the question of salvaging food. There's an organization called Food Bank in Kenya. I don't know whether you're aware of it.
Heard of it.
Yes. And they recover food actually from the farm, from companies that, or even processors who think they have excess food, and they transmit it to people who need it. They're doing very well.
Yeah.
There's another organization called Retrack that does very good work in terms of understanding what policies might be needed to encourage food recovery, for example, from food service.
This is the Retail Trade Association.
Yes. I think it's good to mention them because they're doing a good job, and they're our partners as well. Yeah.
You know what? If you think about because there are very many people who are doing things in their own small way, particularly in the private sector, they're trying to move things, to get things moving, right? And you look back at, they need an enabler. And everybody understands this. for example, the whole talk about cooperatives in this country has for a long time been cooperatives are good. Why are they good? They're good because, for example, farmer cooperatives, economies of scale, they make inputs cheaper. And then linkages to market, they make it easier. And then economies of scale as well, they help to reduce post-harvest losses because you'll be able then to go out to get one place where you have cold chain, which can help the farmers. All those things are understood. And we have farmer cooperatives that have been established in this country. Why is it that we still, for example, have, despite having farmer cooperatives in Nyandarua, we still have potatoes going to waste and milk going to waste? And despite having farmer cooperatives in Ukambani, in Makueni, in Kitui, we still have mangoes going to waste. Why? What's missing here?
That's a difficult question. I will throw it to the food systems expert. You can.
I think these are the inefficiencies we are talking about within the agri-food system, and designing programs and policies, including the cooperatives themselves, with the key stakeholders in mind is really critical. And this is the farmer. So you're talking about cooperatives, Nyandarua, and you have farmers pouring milk on the road, yet there is a cooperative or there's somewhere they can go and take their milk, which has a cooling facility to reduce the waste. But again, rationality in terms of as a rational farmer, and you're in here as a business case, you're here to make money. Possibly an issue to do with the economic factors. Yeah, at that moment. I'm not saying that's the case. Maybe the price is not right for you at that moment, and you make that decision to, I will not take to the cooperative, the offers that I'm getting at the cooperatives do not suit me. And we need to understand some things with post-harvest. Farmers are not only just farming for the sake of it most of the time. It's it's a livelihood.
Yep.
Yeah.
So when, as a farmer, you produce your milk, you have bills to pay. You have education bills, you have health bills, and you have that. So you are also making a rational decision to look at somebody who will pay you for that, and within the least time possible, isn't it? So those are some of the factors that may influence the decision for these farmers to do what they do and not work with the cooperatives. So again, there we need to think about what kind of institutional arrangements need to improve within the cooperatives to enable farmers, improve this enabling environment within the cooperatives, within the aggregation centers, to enable farmers take their produce there and get the return that they were expecting, vis-a-vis them now going and deciding I'd rather
Ipote. Yeah, because there's nothing coming. But also maybe, just thinking top of my mind, maybe also because we don't have a properly established market system, various market systems.
Yeah.
Because then if you think about it, if you're thought about, we talk about value addition all the time. So value addition is already a market system, and then you're going up and up and up towards, you've added value here, so where are you taking it to? If we had a properly structured and modernized and developed market system, that farmer cooperative, because probably the farmer has not taken the milk to the cooperative because the cooperative has told them, look, our chillers are full. And our chillers are full because we don't have an off-taker of this excess produce that we have right now. Their normal off-taker already has reached their capacity. So there's a surplus, and not other players who would play, for example, into converting milk into milk powder or into other products. So it just is not developing well enough, not developed well enough. Same thing with mangoes. So like a cooperative takes the mangoes to this particular off-taker, one off-taker. This one off-taker is now saturated. So saturation of the market ends up with farm gate losses.
Yeah, I mean, I think you are right. There's a need sort of to look at, as she says, the institution of support mechanism or the governance mechanisms at the cooperatives. But you are right. The biggest challenge in laws, food laws and waste, appears to be market access. And the next one would be perhaps logistics, which is related to infrastructure. I mentioned earlier about how we are engaging companies to innovate around, for example, to be able to increase their off-take rates, or even innovate in terms of making fitting contractual arrangements with farmers. It's not going to happen probably for all commodities, but they will start making movements in the right direction, and this could provide very useful lessons for other companies.
Yeah. So tell us about Sunday. Is there a gig somewhere? Can we get Monday as a public holiday?
I am not sure whether you get a public holiday, but let's put it even in right context. The fact that it's coming on Sunday, it's a good thing for people. I mean, I hope you're Christians, You remember that one parable in the Bible where Jesus fed 5,000 people, and there were remains. He told the disciples, "You guys collect everything so that nothing is lost or wasted." And that story appears in the 4 Gospels, Matthew. So we are doing something that we're really passionate about, and we hope we could also use that avenue, for example, on Sundays for some of us who are leaders in church, to speak about the issues that affect us as people, as congregations. And one of them is this question of food. Yeah.
So is there an event?
Different partners have organized events, but I don't think it will take place on Sunday.
Okay.
Perhaps there will be a rollover in the following week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of events, what we are doing is creating awareness within our programs at FAO, because we work at county level on the issue of food loss and waste. But we are also going to be combining this awareness day in October with the World Food Day, where we are also going to have an event to create this more awareness within a bigger group on why do we need to address food loss and waste, and also launch the post-harvest strategy. Yeah.
That's a good one. We have a policy on food security, food and nutrition security policy. We cannot be talking about food security if 30% of what we're producing as food is going to waste, and we do nothing about it. So it's good that you're raising this conversation, and we thank you very much for joining us today. We have been talking to Rebeccah Wanjiru. She is a food systems specialist at the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and Dr. Christopher Mutungi, senior researcher for food programs at the World Resources Institute. This is a very important conversation coming ahead of the International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste 2024 that will be commemorated on Sunday, the 29th of September.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.